Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be speaking to you about a symbol that's important to me, and that symbol is Ouroboros. So let's get a nice little look there for those of you who don't know what it looks like. Hopefully you can see that. Yep. Alright. Ouroboros is a symbol that has had many meanings over the year. First, it was a great god of ancient civilizations. Then second, it became more of a symbol for certain societies and certain values and everlasting life. And third, it devolved into a darker, more personal symbol for certain cultures and myself. So to begin, let's talk about Ouroboros' origins. Ouroboros, the original creation, was believed to be by the Egyptians, who believed that a god by the name of Menhen surrounded Ra to protect him through his first journey through the underworld. And the way that Menhen protected him was he took the form of two snakes biting one another's tails, creating an unbroken circle that protected him as he descended into the underworld. We also see him showing up as a more universal being described by Plato during the early civilization eras, as the Greeks interpreted him more as a being of the universe. Plato described him as the first living creature, a creature that had no eyes, for it did not need to see, no feet, for it did not need to move, no stomach, for it did not need to eat. It was the perfect creature, and it was truly immortal, and it was the first thing ever made. Then you have the Vikings, who believed that Ouroboros was one of their great gods and was a serpent who grew to such immense size that he surrounded the entire circumference of the world, biting his own tail underneath the ocean, and would one day rise up and fight the worlds of men. However, all of these faded away as we got closer to the Middle Ages, where Ouroboros began to take on different images and became more of a symbol and less of a deity, as the major religions grew more into preeminence. So, one of the major things that Ouroboros stood for in the science world was in the world of alchemy, which is a science that's no longer particularly popular or really around anymore. And during the Middle Ages, alchemy was a science that was founded, it was a lot like chemistry, but they had two goals that were somewhat spiritual meaning in alchemy, and one was to turn any sort of substance into gold, and the other was to create a legendary substance known as the Philosopher's Stone, which Ouroboros represented to them. Ouroboros was the pinnacle symbol of those who studied the ways of alchemy, and it represented the Philosopher's Stone. For the Philosopher's Stone was everlasting life. The Philosopher's Stone was everlasting power, wealth, and all of these other things, and Ouroboros stood for that. Ouroboros also showed up in certain different societies more further in the eastern part of the main Asia, that it signified just immortality and eternal life, and all of these things that people back in those ages thought was an actually accessible idea, and Ouroboros came to represent a symbol of that. Finally, in the more modern era, Ouroboros has kind of taken a darker turn. The Japanese are the most recent culture to have adopted the sign of the Ouroboros, though to them it stands as a representation of man's sin. But they're talking more along the lines of the 7 deadly sins, and it's a symbol of how man is a repetitive creature when it comes to his sins, and he's an all-consuming creature, and that man will constantly consume himself because of his sins, and there is no escape from that. To me personally, Ouroboros is important because I believe it's a good reflection of mankind's history more than necessarily mankind's sin. To me, Ouroboros shows that as humans, historically, we tend to repeat in cycles, whether it be our tragedies or some of our great accomplishments or empires. A lot of things happen again and again and again throughout the ages, and Ouroboros is almost a perfect symbol of the way humanity is and it acts. And so, for that reason alone, I would say that Ouroboros is one of the most important symbols in the world out to me because it reflects our nature and it reflects who we are. So, with the not-so-humble beginnings as a great god of some of the most powerful civilizations to ever grace the world, devolving down to its modern form of representing man's darker nature, especially when it comes to war and plague and oppression and all those things. Ouroboros is an important symbol, and one that it's good to be aware of and to know. So I hope you've enjoyed my speech today, informing you about Ouroboros and giving you the history behind the serpent eating its own tail, and understanding why it's important to me. Thank you.